Now I'm going to pass it over to Miss Annalisa Dahlgren. She's going to be handling our free response questions section. Yeah, and I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, Annalisa. Just let me know when you need me to move the slides for you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annalisa Dahlgren, and I teach 9th grade human geography in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Madison. And tonight I'm going to talk a little bit with you about FRQs and advice for you and your students as you're preparing for the FRQs on this year's exam. Next slide. At my school, I run an AP Human Geography mentor program where previous students who took the class as 9th graders offer advice, facilitate study sessions, and give support for current students. So as I was preparing for the webinar, I reached out to this year's class of mentors, 54 former students, for advice and insight about preparing for the FRQ. And their answers led me to these 5 ideas. First, know what to expect. Second, know the task verbs. Third, write complete answers. Fourth, know the terms. And fifth, practice, practice, practice. So on the next few slides, you'll see direct quotes from my student mentors who offer some student voice about the FRQ and the process of preparing to feel successful about those FRQs. Next slide, please. So the first way to prepare is to know what to expect. As you already heard tonight, the format for the FRQs is standard and predictable. The order of the FRQs is also predictable regarding the number of stimuli. And students can try out the Blue Book app on their computer to see what the interface looks like. If you haven't done that yet, it's really nice for peace of mind for them to see exactly what the digital interface will look like the day of the exam. We talk about in my class that they'll write 3 FRQs, but also 21 short answers, which can sometimes help them understand the task at hand with a little more clarity. My students also say that seeing previously released FRQs is really useful just to get a feeling for what actual questions look like. In fact, last week we looked at the released FRQs from 2024, and when my students pulled them up, they said, oh, this isn't that bad. And that really helped them feel a lot more prepared for the first week in May. Next slide. As you've already heard, knowing the task verbs is super important. And to add student voice to what was already shared, students see the importance of discerning the different demands for each verb. So going over this clearly with students is so important so they know what each type of prompt requires. In short, students benefit from internalizing the differences in the task verbs that they'll see in the FRQs. Next slide. Write complete answers. I think sometimes with my 9th graders, it's a challenge to get them to fully explain their ideas completely in a way which will earn them the point on the AP test. I encourage my students to use because and for example when they see a describe, an explain, and a compare question so that they fully have supported their answer to the best way that they can. We also talk about how the teacher who's scoring their work is likely not familiar with our local community. So how important it is to give context if they're using a local example from their own life or something they've experienced, just so that the reader understands exactly where they're coming from. The bottom line is that the teacher who's scoring these FRQs doesn't see all of the good work that they've done in class all year. So the more details they can add to make their case really strong, that they know what they're talking about and they've learned this material in human geography, the better. Next slide. Students need to know the terms. The reality is that the FRQs will rely on an understanding of specific vocabulary from this class that stretches across units. So studying vocabulary can look a lot of different ways for a lot of different students. So trying out different approaches to practice with vocabulary in these last few weeks is important. That can be Quizlets or reviewing notes from class or quizzing a friend or using a review book. All of those can help students do good work on both the multiple choice and the FRQ sections of the test. Next slide, please. You've heard it already tonight, but it's worth repeating. There are so many practice opportunities that can be available for students, and practice really can make a difference in this home stretch between now and the AP exam. Sometimes in my class, we carve out time to do individual practice on FRQs. These can be whole FRQs, all 7 parts, or sometimes we shorten them to just the first 3 or the first 4. Sometimes I use released exams. Sometimes I use exams from AP Classroom or other sources as well. Sometimes we do these individually. Sometimes we do them with a friend and share the pen, alternating sentences or sections to make sure that we're pushing ourselves to write our best responses. Sometimes I record it as a formative grade, and sometimes it's just in-class practice. Sometimes we handwrite them. Sometimes we type them so we can get experience with that process as well. Next slide. Practice also helps students feel more confident with the timing on the AP exam. Remember, 21 short answer questions in 75 minutes, that's a tall order for some students. Budgeting 25 minutes for each FRQ is a learned skill, and different practice opportunities can help make students just feel more confident about their timing that they'll use on the actual AP exam. Next slide. Some practice can happen during class, but it can also be an individual study choice that students might make as they are individually preparing for the exam. At my school, we have some optional Saturday or after school practice exams for students to get the feeling of what their brain goes through when they answer 60 multiple choice questions and then write 3 back-to-back FRQs. I also have students who use review books at practice like iScore5 and AP Classroom to just get more exposure and practice with FRQs. And that's it. Good luck to you and your students as we're moving into exam prep over these last few weeks.